Hi, it's Robbie from Southern California. I'm on my deck, and right now I just want to talk about the heat because we're starting to go into our hot weather here. We're still close enough to the ocean, even though we're not, that we've been getting an ocean influence. So it's kind of cool in the morning, cool at night, and very warm during the day. But now where we are, it's going to get really, really hot, and we probably will remain hot all the way through into September, well into September. So I want to talk about how we can maintain our plants, and even on the deck here, where it gets to over 100 degrees, to keep going. So once the weather cools down, a lot of them will continue to grow. The main thing right now on our plants is get everything off that the plant's not using. All this I've been taking off. It comes off the squash plant. This one's about ready to come off. It's still producing, but if I leave a lot of these big leaves, see how it's turning yellow? All it's going to do is draw water from the plant. The stem, the stalk of the leaf is still very green, but it's going into this that's not doing that well. Now, if the plant had very little leaves, you could actually take a scissors and just trim it and leave the green part, because the part that's brown like this isn't really helping the plant at all. You can get in there and get rid of anything that is definitely not helping the plant. Here you could go through your tomatoes and pick off anything that looks like that. See, I've been picking them because once they turn yellow, though they're still trying to feed off the plant, they're not doing the plant any good. So walk around, look at your plants, and decide what has to come off. Now, it's best on the tomatoes to cut them. The reason you want to cut them is if you pull it, you could damage the stalk, which can create an issue of bacteria or something getting in there, and some of you call it a disease, by opening up a wound like that. But when you cut it, it will dry quickly and not hurt the plant. But that's not doing the plant any good. So kind of look around your plants and see which ones need a really good trimming. That could save the plant for a very, very long time. I'll trim that one. See, actually that one, no, it didn't come off. But see, sometimes they'll break right off. And if you can bend them down and up and they come off, then that's a good thing. If you bend them, here's a tomato plant. See, if you bend it, it's not coming off. I wouldn't force it because it will open up a wound. These were ready to release and it worked better. By trimming your plants like that, even on the beans, getting rid of the brown leaves, this can help your plant last longer. And don't throw those leaves away, because every leaf is going to turn into your soil no matter what. Don't worry about powdery mildew. Same thing on the squash. You can snap them off. See, it gives a nice clean snap off there. That will dry right away like all this did. And what it will do is it will start to send out new shoots. See, this is a purple tree collard. See the leaves there? They're starting to send out new growth there. And if it gets big enough, at that point, you can trim it off and make new plants. So kind of think about that. Same thing with parsley. If you've got parsley, go ahead and get them off. Now let me show you something I did wrong. I didn't take the squash off the zucchini Bush Baby. I wanted to make sure it got really ripe because I want to keep the seeds, just out of curiosity, to see how they're going to grow. It ended up killing the plant. Now, why did the plant die? Now, this one had a big problem. See, it came up, it had an injury, so I had to wrap it with tulle, and that did save the zucchini to grow zucchini for me. But this zucchini I wanted to leave because I want to collect the seeds, and I know by now there's good seeds in there, so I can get that off, and I don't think the plant will come back on that. And that's all right. But by doing that, the plant got the message that it did what it was supposed to do, and it has now produced seeds. What it would do by nature, no matter where you live, it would sit there on the plant would die, this would sit, insects eventually will come to it. Notice nothing has come to it. Rodents would come to it, munch it down, and then it would break down there. And then if you're in an area where you get snow, it'd be covered with snow, and come spring it will grow. Here it will just rot away, and there's kind of a time clock in there that if I left it, it would do nothing until spring. And even if the leaves are falling, all of a sudden in spring, the whole thing would be bursting with all new growth. So I know that the mistake was not taking that off. If I would have taken it off, the end that was growing would have continued. Can I save this plant? maybe I'm going to trim that off today and it might grow. So keep that in mind. If you've got squash that has to come off or cucumbers, get them off or the plant will be done. That's basically it. You just want to kind of go through, check and see, like, will this snap off? Yes, it does. And then maybe you can save a lot. Now your beans, this is scarlet runner beans, and we've got beans everywhere. I've been picking some beans. This particular bean can come back next spring. If it dies back, it can come back from the roots. Not all beans can do that, but this one can. I'm just going to trim off some of the leaves, and then that will help it continue to grow. Now this is popolo. I might take the bottom off. Gary loves popolo. You treat this like cilantro. In other words, that's how you cook and use it. Oh my gosh, my hands smell from it. It's very strong. If you like cilantro, you should like popolo. You grow that usually in between cilantro. So if cilantro can't grow now because of the heat, even though I am growing it, a lot of people grow popolo, and then the popolo you have in your cuisine the same way you would use cilantro. Now the difference with this is, it's an interesting plant. You can't dry these leaves or do anything with them because the plant gives off its flavor while it's on here. In other words, the leaves carry the flavor, but the moment it's off the plant and it dries up, like in a matter of days, the flavor's gone. Where cilantro, you could dry it, you could save the seeds. This only has the flavor when you're using it green. So don't trim it off and then use it in a couple days. You may not get any flavor. So that's basically it. I wanted to talk about the heat. And then the other thing, we're not quite hot yet. We're just in the 90s and we're going to hit over 100 probably today. The other thing is when you are watering your plants, and there's my cilantro, which is still growing, and new ones coming up. Isn't that cool? There's a new one. When you have a hose, now here my hose is covered up inside the sink. So the hose is okay and it's a fabric hose. But when you're in the garden and you're using a rubber hose or a plastic hose, make sure you do not turn your hose on until you have it in a spot where it's not going to water anything. Just put it in a spot where it's just either cement or solid dirt, and then turn it on and touch it, because that is so hot that you could end up killing your plant. So if you leave it in a tote, turn the water on, and you let that water go into your tote, is a big possibility you killed everything, because that water will come out so hot it will burn the roots and kill the plant. So make sure before you water any of your plants, be it during the day or even in the evening, you touch the water that's coming out of the hose and make sure it's cool, and then water your plants. I think we've covered everything. I'm just trying to keep things trimmed. I will continue to go through the onions, do the same thing, clip them off, because anything that's not, green is doing the plant no good, and it's just hanging on. Now, brown leaves aren't drawing any water, but absolutely any yellowing leaves are. Like here's a yellow leaf. That is still drawing water. That's why it's still wet, because it's pulling moisture. And in the heat, we want the main plant to not have to struggle and be able to pull water up where it needs it. Don't worry about droopiness. As soon as the sun comes out and it gets over 100 degrees, all my leaves go down. That's okay. Do not wet the leaves ever. If you wet the leaves, it's like you cooked them. Put them in a pot, fill them with water, boiled it, turn the fire off, drain the water out. Well, you've cooked them. That's what you've done. You've wet the leaves at 100 degrees and you have cooked them. You can water them only at the base. I water in the morning if it's really hot, and if I need to, but I tend to water more at night at the base of the plant. So I think I've covered everything right now about heat. Ask some more questions if you have anything else. I love the totes here because the totes and the plastic buckets retain moisture in them. So as you see, I have not watered today, and yet from yesterday, it is still all nice and damp. I like to layer when possible because that holds water underneath the pots. And of course, I'm now doing my pitchers, which I'm going to get a lot of pitchers in here because that retains a lot of water. So the two system, the pitchers, all that will help retain water in the heat. And on top of that, it feeds the plant too. So I hope you enjoyed that. And I'm going to let the hummingbirds come back and enjoy their little special place. See, they have the water fountain now that's hanging in the bucket. That's shaded from the sun. And in there, what I do is I periodically come out and I throw some ice cubes in the fountains, and the same thing in the hummingbird feeders. We'll have to talk about that, how I do that, because that's done in a special way. With that, have a wonderful, wonderful day. And don't forget, to eat what you grow. Bye-bye.